channel 124.
Clowns to left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Now, here's Michael Smerconish.
So I'm sitting here in studio and just sort of getting my game face on, looking at my notes, sipping my coffee, getting strapped in with my headphones, and I'm listening to the CBS News feed. And I just heard, as I'm about to begin the Friday program, that one of the major CBS stories is a story about how Hertz, the car rental company, is now under fire from lawmakers, namely Senators Warren and Blumenthal, because there's litigation that has been filed and a number of their clients say, hey, Hertz called the police on me saying that I had stolen my rental car. We talked about exactly that issue yesterday. TC, was that the third hour of the program when lawyer Francis Malafie was here?
Was that yesterday or was that the day before
so
yesterday?
Confused. Well, how about this? I know that Francis was our guest. He's been a guest of ours in the past. I think it was yesterday. I might be mistaken. But what stands out in my mind is that after he made his pitch as to what's going on here, a lot of the callers were not on board.
No, they were not on board.
A lot of the callers were more sympathetic to Hertz, but
right.
Kind of interesting. We were ahead of the curve on that here on POTUS, and now I hear it as part of the 4 or 5 minute CBS News feed, which is of interesting. It is Freaky Friday, insofar as I am reversing course, and instead of ending the program with headlines from Smerconish.com, I wish to begin them. What was Freaky Friday? It was a reversal of some kind, wasn't it?
The movie with the mother and daughter reversing.
And they
were in the same body, but their minds were swinging.
Was it Jamie Lee Curtis?
That was one of them. There was a remake. It was like 2003, 2013. There've been a few of them.
All right. Not bad.
But yes.
Not
good job.
bad. I wasn't that far away.
I think it was pretty good for you.
So I have to tell you a quick funny story at the outset of the program. Yesterday's survey results. Yesterday, why did it take so long for certain media to confirm Hunter Biden's laptop? I provided all the background yesterday. I gave you two choices. One choice was because investigation needed to be done, and the editor of the Washington Post stories about the Biden laptop was here yesterday and said, we ran the story when we were able to run the story. So that was one choice. Another choice was bias. 9,337 votes were cast. Bias won at 60.84%. Those who said it was just part and parcel of an investigation that needed to be ripe were 39.16%. So as I told the audience that I would do yesterday, I reached out for Tony Bobulinski. Bobulinski is the guy who came forth at the end of the 2020 election and said, I was Hunter Biden's business partner. Here's what transpired. And in many quarters, he didn't get airtime. TC, you will remember, the audience will remember, at the time I said, I find this guy to be credible. And my position all along relative to Hunter was not so much to slam Hunter Biden or to raise questions about Joe Biden, who I think is an ethical guy, but I've never been satisfied with the media's handling of this issue. The way that Facebook and Twitter wouldn't allow the New York Post story to get circulated. Anyway, that's all by way of very brief background. So I tracked down Bobulinski by his cell phone. I text him and I say, hey, I'm Michael Smerconish. If you're doing media, I would welcome the opportunity for a chat. I think I also said I will treat you with dignity and respect. Okay? So this is me playing producer yesterday. He responds to me with a clip of a montage. I wasn't sure what it was at first. I click on the montage and it becomes readily apparent what it was.
There's no evidence that Hunter Biden has done anything wrong.
There is no evidence of any wrongdoing between by Joe Biden, or by Hunter Biden.
There's no evidence that Joe Biden.
It was like a 2-minute clip of only CNN personalities being dismissive of the Hunter Biden story. So, that was his response to me. My response to him was to say, guess who's not in that montage? Me. And of course, totally lost, I guess, on Bobulinski is the fact that I've been here on POTUS trying to be fair to everybody.
So does that mean you did not book him on either CNN?
He will not be a part of this program.
Just wondering. I'm just asking.
But that was his response. His response was no verbiage. Here's a clip.
It occurs to me that I'm thinking about your response yesterday when we were talking about debates, and you gave a very cogent 90-second response about a border question as candidate Smerconish.
I was trying to illustrate that 90 seconds is nothing, and that any candidate can fill 90 seconds on any issue. And I challenged you to hit me with an issue. You chose immigration, and I gave you 90 seconds of BS on immigration.
But it wasn't BS. It was good. I thought.
Pretty good, yeah.
But my point is, I think that if you wanted to run, you, Michael Smerconish, wanted to run here in Pennsylvania.
For what?
Let's say Senate, governor, anything.
Mm-hmm.
You would be painted with a very broad brush, a la Mr. Bobulinski.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire, especially middle of the state, would say, no, he's on CNN.
He's a CNN guy.
Dismiss you.
Oh, yeah, he's a CNN
large.
guy.
But here,
and I would then say, and what exactly have I said
doesn't
that
matter.
You find objectionable? Hamina.
It doesn't matter. And then here, the social media reaction to you talking about the Hunter Biden story was overwhelming.
Why are you talking about it?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the calls this week, by the way, why am I talking about it? I'm talking about it only because the New York Times and Washington Post have now recognized the authenticity of emails on Hunter's laptop. And my interest in it has always been from a media standpoint. Megan McArdle wrote a pretty good column in the Washington Post, by the way, on exactly this issue. But you're right, TC, in that many members of the POTUS audience, probably right now, 10 minutes into today's program, are thinking, why is he talking about it? I don't want to hear about it anymore. Meanwhile, at the other extreme, it's like, oh, he's a CNN guy.
Right. So therefore,
can't win.
I can't
win.
I just don't think you can win in Pennsylvania.
It will not.
So there it is.
None of this will dissuade me
from running.
No, not from running, but from discussing all of these things.
Good.
All of these things. Today's survey question at Smerconish.com. Should Congress deschedule? I think I worded this correctly. Deschedule cannabis as a Schedule I illegal drug under the Controlled Substances Act. Why am I bringing this up? Legal weed is expected to pass the House of Representatives today. It has happened before, but this, according to the Hill coverage that I went with, the House is set to pass legislation on Friday to legalize marijuana nationwide, an effort that has unprecedented levels of support in both chambers of Congress. The bill is likely to pass the lower chamber largely along party lines, with most Republicans expected to oppose it. So what exactly they would be doing here, it is called the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement, or MORE Act, would eliminate criminal penalties associated with the drug and establish a process to expunge previous convictions from people's criminal record. It's the second time House Democrats have advanced legislation to decriminalize marijuana. So will it get through the Senate? No, it probably won't get through the Senate. It should, in my opinion. We've still got this disconnect in terms of the federal standard and the way that the federal law looks at it as a what should I say, a Schedule I narcotic. I think that's the proper lingo. And I'm saying, should that go away? I mean, marijuana is illegal, according to federal law. And yet you've got all these states that have come on board and in one form or another have legalized. The jobs report just came out today. The jobs report showed that the U.S. economy added 431,000 jobs in March. Unemployment is now at a 3.6%, pre-COVID-ish level. Well, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal today that is posted at Smerconish.com and in the newsletter. Really interesting. Headline: positive drug tests among U.S. workers hit 2-decade high. The percentage of workers in America testing positive for drugs hit a 2-decade high, driven by an increase in positive marijuana tests as businesses might have loosened screening policies amid nationwide labor shortages. I speak to many people who are in a blue collar working, hiring mode, and they say, can't get workers. Why not? Can't get workers, A, because people aren't interested in the work, B, because those who come are unwilling or cannot pass a drug test. So, of course, this is logical. It stands to reason that with so many areas being accepting now of marijuana for medical purposes or for recreational purposes, you've got a lot of individuals who are not able to pass a test. And it also addresses an issue that we've discussed here previously, which is, I can have a cocktail at night and by the morning I'm ready to pass a test. But if somebody smokes a joint at night, they're still going to have weed in their system. And even though their head will be clear, they're going to fail the test, which is a reason why this federal law really does need to change. Of the more than 6 million general workforce urine tests that Quest Diagnostics, one of the nation's largest drug testing labs, screened for marijuana last year, 3.9% came back positive, an increase of more than 8% from the prior year. That figure is up 50% from 2017, since the number of states that legalized marijuana for recreational use grew to 18 from 8, plus the District of Columbia. Many employers have stopped testing for marijuana. Many employers saying we're having difficulty finding qualified workers to pass the drug test. So vote at Smerconish.com today on the question of, should Congress deschedule cannabis as a Schedule I illegal drug under the Controlled Substances Act? My answer to that question is yes. As long as I'm doing the data dive, let me give you some other interesting information from polling information pertaining to Ukraine. There's a new Economist poll out there. It shows that 92% of Americans over 64 sympathize more with Ukraine. This seems like a no-brainer, right? Do you sympathize more with Ukraine or Russia? I'm shocked that 8% say Russia of older than 64-year-olds in the United States. Okay, to me, you would think it would be 99% and that there would be a 1% margin of error. All right, those are the older folks. How about this? Just when you ask 18 to 29-year-olds, what percentage of them sympathize with Ukraine? Only 56%. What? Only 56%. And it's a reminder to me of a Quinnipiac survey that we talked about here recently. And I said on CNN this morning, as a matter of fact, that I'm dubious of this finding, but I'm going to share it with you nonetheless. From Quinnipiac, as the world witnesses what is happening to Ukraine, Americans were asked what they would do if they were in the same position as Ukrainians are now. Would you stay and fight, or would you leave the country? 55% said they'd stay and fight. 38% said flight. They would leave the country. 55, 38, 7% said, I don't know. My belief is that the I don't knows are probably a majority if people are being honest. In other words, I'm surprised that 38% would confess to a pollster that they would leave the country if they were in the same position as Ukraine rather than stay and fight. That shocked me. You'd think that people would lie and get out their beer muscles. What I didn't say on television this morning is that actually I used one analogy. I said, I've heard from a lot of people, both on radio and just in my orbit this week, talking about Chris Rock and Will Smith. I've heard from a number of people, guy friends, who say, how come Chris Rock didn't fight back? Have you heard that, TC? Have you heard anybody say, like, why didn't Chris Rock hit him back?
I've heard a couple people say that, yeah, that they thought his passive reaction was
right. So I say to them, I don't think you know what you would do until you're in Chris Rock's position.
Because you're so shocked also. I think that that's a unique situation. It's not like a bar fight. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the Oscars on stage. Like, I think he was so floored. And I also think he did the very best he could do, but that's a different story.
But it's also my Sandusky story, right?
Gosh,
you know, when
you never know.
When McQueary claims that he saw something untoward in the shower, and what did he do? Of course, he goes and he reports it to Paterno the next day. But what did he do then? He banged his locker. And what did everybody say on radio at the time? You know, going back 10 years, why didn't he kick his ass?
Right.
Why didn't he run into the shower and take on Sandusky and save that boy? And I said, yeah, I would have. I hope. I don't think you know. Anyway, 55% say they'd stay and fight. 38% say they'd leave. There's a big party divide. Many more Republicans say they'd stay and fight than Democrats. I think that the 7% who don't know are the honest ones. But why do I bring this up on the heels of the Economist survey, where older Americans sympathize with Ukraine, younger Americans sympathize less with Ukraine? Because in the fight or flight question, there was also a significant generational divide. When you ask the 35 to 49-year-olds, 50% of them say that they would stay and fight. 18 to 34-year-olds, the number diminishes to 45%. And then the older folks say that they wouldn't fight, but they're old, so they probably would not do so. To the extent you can believe it, I also have a survey today at Smerconish.com about Putin's popularity. Vladimir Putin's ratings have seen a boost since the start of military actions in Ukraine. This is according to the independent Levada Center, with over 80% of Russians saying that they support the Russian president's actions. And yeah, there's actually a guy, and Putin regards him as an enemy of state, but he claims that he can properly do surveys of the Russian people. To the extent that Putin's numbers are rising, it takes me back a week to when President Biden was leaving Poland and delivered the speech and had the 9 words at the end that were unscripted but called for regime change. I came on air, and what did I say? I said there are 3 reasons why it was not approved President Biden to do, even though we all agree with President Biden, we want Putin to be toppled. The issue was whether Joe Biden should have said it. And one of the justifications that I offered as to why he should not have said it is because I said you're playing into Putin's hand, and he gets to rally his base by saying, see, the West, they want to depose me. The West, they want a coup here. And so to the extent these numbers are accurate, I think that's really part of the reason. Rallying the base being the headline. How about this from Fox News? DeSantis broaches repeal of Disney World's special self-governing status in Florida. Did you know, TC, that Disney World, where I'm sure you visited, they self-govern? In other words,
I saw that headline and I literally was like, what were they talking about here? Like,
right.
I didn't even know what that was.
So
explain.
Okay. What it means is I remember being at Disney and getting all caught up and buying a book and reading it at the time. I don't remember the title. I was just fascinated from a real estate development perspective. How did Walt Disney, this would have been in the 60s, how did he put the land together?
Didn't he do it under cover of darkness?
Yeah,
right?
Surreptitiously,
Yeah.
right. And somewhere at Disney, they tell the story. I have recollection of touring a back lot, and there's an airplane, and Disney would get in that airplane and survey from up above. The people,
Like, I need that.
Yeah.
I need that.
that, and that. Yeah, the people who were selling to a shell company didn't know they were selling to Disney.
Would they have wanted to? Was it a big?
Well, no.
They didn't even know it existed.
No, they would have to. But if you knew that, I mean, if you knew
jack
that,
the price up.
yeah, the Brinks truck has just arrived.
Right.
Right. I mean, we used to say if you had a really strong plaintiff's case, when I was practicing law full time, you'd say that, a casino bus just ran over my client.
Oh, geez. But the self-governing thing, Michael, I was thinking when I saw that headline of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it Judge Seamus McCaffrey who had the police station like in the bowels of Veteran Stadium?
Yeah.
I mean, is that what we're talking about here? Do they have their own courts?
No, because Judge McCaffrey, later Justice McCaffrey, was applying Pennsylvania law. And in this particular case, what it did, this is amazing when you think about it, given the enormity of Disney. It allowed Disney to self-govern and not have to go through the normal apparatus of Florida in order to decide what they're going to build and how they're going to do it.
Oof.
They get to self-govern. Okay. So Governor DeSantis, because Disney now, the leadership of Disney is opposing the, take your pick. Do you want to call it the parental rights bill or the don't say gay bill, right? Because each side now has a good soundbite. But DeSantis is now questioning whether they should be able to, it's called the Rady Creek Act, whether Disney ought to continue to be able to self-govern. So he's threatening to take that away. And the issue here is, like, there's now being shown on a loop on Fox, there's now a video where Disney is saying that they're no longer, this is like a Disney spokesperson, I think surreptitiously recorded, saying we're no longer going to say, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Now it's going to be dreamers of all ages. This is catnip for Republicans. Just take a look at what happened in Virginia with Youngkin's election. As to why DeSantis is fighting Disney, I say, and you can disagree, this is how you secure a Republican nomination for president. It would have sounded nutty years ago that you would want to be at odds with Disney, much less as the Florida governor. You're going to take on that enormous employer, and who doesn't love Disney? What are you going to fight next? Apple pie and Chevrolet? But we live in strange times. And now to take on Disney because Disney is on the other side of the parental rights bill is smart Republican politics. I'm telling you, like CRT, this issue of, and it's really a ridiculous issue at several, do any of us parents want, any of we parents want a teacher to be instructing our kids K through 3 on sexuality? Of course not. Of course we don't. But when you really get into this and recognize that instruction is not defined in the bill, at least for me, I'm sympathetic to teachers who, because there's a classroom exercise or a visitation day, or one kid, because they're curious, becomes aware of another kid's parents being 2 men, 2 women, who the hell knows, but something other than a man and a woman, and a teacher gets asked a question. I don't think teachers ought to be put in a position of not being able to say a word. But it's a great issue for Republicans who portray this as, I mean, if you heard it, you would think, you wouldn't get so far into the weeds. You instead think that, like, somewhere out there's a cabal of teachers who want to teach sexuality to a kid in kindergarten. It's just not the case. But will it be a great issue for the Republicans? It will be a great issue for the Republicans. There's a guy whose last name is Fry at Brookings. He's a demographer. And I know he's been a guest on this program, and maybe we'll have him back. He pointed something out to me that I thought was really interesting, and it's this. A large majority of the nation's parents are people of color and or college educated. A large majority, I want to say 65% of the nation's parents are people of color and or college educated. Democrats need a response, or they're going to get hammered in the midterms because of issues like this. And when I tell you 65% are people of color or college educated, there's an audience out there for a Democratic response, if they have one. They need a Frank Luntz type to teach them how to respond to Governor DeSantis, portraying this as educators want to teach your kids that Heather has 2 mommies. Those are some of the headlines from Smerconish.com. There are lots more with some telephone calls. Make sure you're looking at the website and registering for it every day. We love to say balance delivered daily. Thank you to those who are already registered. And for goodness sakes, vote on today's survey question, which asks, should Congress deschedule cannabis as a Schedule I illegal drug under the Controlled Substances Act? Is it finally time to legalize weed nationwide so as to get away from and end the disconnect between state law and federal law? Call me. I'm at 855-486-1776 on any of the above. 855-486-1776. Always happy to talk about Steve